you didn't see a real estate decline until you saw 6 months of inventory.
Yeah. Yes, that's right.
And they said that's since all this money printing in the United States, it's since broken those rules. And they said right now, well, they said over the last 6 months, and you haven't seen a 6-month decline in market since 2008. And there's been a 6-month straight decline in real estate as of March. And they said that the first 6 months of 2008, I think this is where they came up with it 10 times worse. No, it wasn't. Was it? I don't remember. So it was somewhere in here, but they were saying that the first 6 months of 2008, the real estate market declined 1%. And the real estate market has declined like, I don't remember what they said, like 8% in this 6 months. So taking that into account, that's 8 times worse, right? Over the first 6 months between the two declines. And they said additionally, there was less inventory available in 2000 when that began, the 2008, which was actually 2007 when that market decline began.
Yeah,
there was less inventory.
Not in Orange County.
Right, but there was less inventory available than there is now.
Not in Orange County.
So what they're saying is that's not the driver anymore, the inventory on the market declines, according to this person, anyhow. So not in Orange County. The prices had fallen substantially more, which they had, because when I lived in Washington, I was looking at the real estate market down here, and my house hadn't declined at all. And I was watching the prices just, they were catastrophic in California for those that live in California at the time.
Well, look, what I'm saying is when I looked at inventory levels in 2005, 6, and 7 in Orange County, so back, like right before the crash, they already had normal levels of inventory. So we had like 6,000 to 7,000 homes on the market. Again, this is just Orange County. So every market is completely different. But Orange County is actually completely different than what that guy is describing. We had normal levels of inventory, so which is about 7,000 homes on the market. And then 2008 started to happen. So normal levels, and then inventory dramatically increased well above. So today in Orange County, we have 2,200 homes on the market.
So we're speaking in like terms. So this guy was talking about months. So how many months does that translate to?
Same thing. The numbers are the same thing.
So like 6 months.
It pulls out. So we have. So let's say he said 6 months. So we probably have less than 1 month of inventory in Orange County. It's just the same thing. I'm just tracking a little bit. I'm tracking the metric that determines the month supply.
So I just asked ChatGPT this stuff. I'm gonna share. Can you guys see?
Yep.
Yeah.
So I said, what is likely to happen in the real estate market in the next 10 years? Blah, blah, blah. I don't have the ability to predict. It basically breaks it down by like global. And then I say, okay, well, what about California? Well, California is known for dynamic real estate. Here are some things in the next decade. Affordability challenges may persist. California has been facing a housing affordability crisis for several years, especially in places like LA and San Fran. Technology and innovation can shape the market. It's home to many tech companies. Digital mortgage applications could become more widespread. Climate change could have an impact, as the wildfires and droughts could influence real estate decisions in areas more prone to these type of disasters.
Levels.
Yeah, all that. Changes in demographics as the population ages. You need more smaller, more affordable homes, or a desire for walkable urban communities. Interest rates could rise, making it difficult for affordability. Changes in zoning laws. Then I asked the same thing, expand in more detail for Orange County. So basically, housing supply and affordability. Luxury real estate will continue to thrive. Interest rates may play a role. Climate change could have an impact. And then changes in demographic. Younger generations enter the housing market. Maybe a shift towards more urban, walkable communities, smaller homes, as well as the elder population for assisted living. So it's basically saying, I mean, it doesn't. So look, I could even ask it, is this net good?
Why don't you ask how many homes were on the market?
All right,
I would say how many homes were on the, because I think, Chris, that guy is incorrect. I'm almost certain that today we have, even in most markets, far significantly less inventory than 2005, 6, and 7, even outside of just Orange County, California, than from today. But I'm curious. We should say, yeah, how many homes were on the market in 2006 or 2007?
A couple variants. One, his data I don't believe was specific to California. He didn't bring California up. It was nationwide. His data.
Yeah, exactly. Well, here, I'll look at it.
And then another thing he said was, in his opinion, the markets won't crash anything like 2008 because of the interest rates. Where we're at now in terms of interest. Well, he's saying the data would point to 10 times worse 2008. Then after he went through all of that, he said it probably won't crash that bad. He said he's expecting 20%.
So let's ask the AI. Well,
got it. So he posted just something dramatic saying 10 times, but he really didn't think that.
Right. His personal opinion. He said the data would point to that, but his personal opinion, because of interest rates, people are just not willing to sell right now, because why would they? He said 80% of all 80% of all homeowners carry a mortgage, and like 75% of those are locked in at 2 to 3%. So why would they sell their home to move to someplace where they're paying 8%?
And this is exactly why we have a serious inventory problem.
Right. Nobody's selling and nobody's buying.
Exactly. And that's another reason why transactions are down. Demand is down. It's not completely dead, but it's down for sure. With the rates being at 7% today, yeah, dude. And prices really they've come down a little bit, but I mean, prices would need to come down like 30 or 40% to off balance what has happened with rates. And they just unfortunately haven't done that yet. They very well could.
Well, again, you have to have people willing to sell too, to a degree.
Well, you do.
The AI doesn't think it will be as severe.
That's the age-old rule, is that supply demand, right? So the greater supply, generally prices would come down, and that's actually what happened. That's exactly what happened in 2008.
The AI doesn't think that it will be as severe though, and so I gave it 2 opportunities to, if it's going to be more severe than the next one, and it says it doesn't think so. The next crash may not be as severe because of stronger lending standards, lower levels of speculative investing, more cautious approach to lending, and economic recovery. And then I said, well, what are the cases for a more severe crash? And it's still leaning towards, while there are reasons to believe may not be as severe, here's some potential factors that could contribute to more severe crash. Economic instability. Despite the economic recovery, there are still economic risks like a recession, overvalued real estate. In some market, real estate prices have reached levels that are unsustainable, particularly in areas with strong demand, limited supply, rising interest rates. While interest rates have remained low in years, they could rise. Risky lending practices. While lending standards have become more stringent since 2008, there is still a risk that some lenders may engage in risky practices. And then geopolitical instability. So for what it's worth, the AI thinks it's not going to be as severe, Chris. So I don't know what you want to think about this.
I mean, it could be. I mean, I definitely think it could be. I just think it would be the first time inventory it would be the first time in history that supply was low, but prices went down. And I think that could happen because of rates just being what we're talking about. Rates being so high, it's just unaffordable. And so, we'll just have low supply and prices coming down a little bit, but it's just crazy because that has never happened in history.
So I take a different view of that on what your argument is there, Dan. And that's the fact that you're just using ChatGPT, because where ChatGPT gets its information is from the internet, right? And it's taking its information from what are considered reliable news sources, which, at least in my mind, are not necessarily reliable when it comes to a political skew, right? So if you can have any kind of political tint to it, it's not going to be accurate. It's just not.
Yep, I know. It had climate change in like every reason, and like as if home prices are impacted by if one mansion gets damaged.
Yeah, right. Climate change was in that's and that was like the halfway
So
through the list. This is the bottom, halfway.
so yeah, it's very much if there was a conservative or a right-leaning president right now and all of the economic information were negative, which it probably would be, you would get a completely different answer, in my opinion.
Maybe it only scans until 2021 so far is what it said. And it doesn't really like, yeah, it uses the internet as like reference,
No, it's
but
not a reference. That's solely where it gets its data.
it's where
Solely.
it gets his no. The
So
other place
I'm
is
reading it
from the
right here.
from the
Generative AI models of this type are trained on vast amounts of information from the internet, including websites, books, news articles, and more. So it's from the internet, all of it.
but it
And
also
he
uses
doesn't have
the
the hat on, by the way. I'm just saying.
but it does use the user's input like as an extra layer of searching. Like when the users feed it information, like there's been times where I told
Sure, where
ChatGPT,
you can ask it to look elsewhere.
yeah. So that like it gets better with the users, but yeah, basically it's
Right.
from the internet. It's from the internet.
It's
Um,
whatever's been published online.
yeah.
And every book is online, but the books that are online, it's scrubbing that.
Yeah. So buy more in this year or no? Bottom line for you guys.
Well, I mean, Chris, do you have anything to add to? I mean, it's intriguing that what that guy had said. I just think he might be a little bit off on the inventory thing, but I mean, is there anything else? He thinks so. He thought in that article's prices would be 30% down, or values would be 30% down.
20 he felt that over the next couple of years values would fall by 22%. He said that's not nearly enough to make up or offset what homes have increased in value over the last 3 years.
Yeah.
He said you're looking at somewhere between 30 and 40% over the last 3 years in increased value throughout the nation.
Yeah.
So basically, he didn't say this, but what I took from what he was saying is new buyers are just screwed. I mean, they're priced out. They're completely priced out.
That is true.
Have there been a mass exodus from California? I'm thinking locally now for investing.
From Orange County?
Yeah. Or from California in general.
Like call it a mass exodus. I would say that definitely people have left California, and I think.
But is it noticeable, like from everyday life? Like is traffic less severe?
No.
So I believe what I saw was somewhere between 500,000 and 1 million that California has lost over the last 2 years or 3 years, something like that.
Okay, but it's not noticeable in everyday life.
Not yet.
Because like you guys remember during lockdowns, traffic was like noticeably like cut in half. I mean,
it was more.
You could get to LA in like 20 minutes. Remember we
Yeah.
got to Dr. Al's and back in like 20 minutes each way?
Yeah.
That was insane.
But that was during the lockdown, so it's a huge difference. But if you do the math, right, there was 40 million people in California. I think it's 39 now. So you lost 1 million.
Well, because the way I brought that up is because like some of these right-leaning, like you were saying, fear porn, sells. A lot of these fear porn clickbait people are making it seem like, oh, it's mass exodus, like the same amount of people left California that went on lockdowns too.
So technically it is a mass exodus. I mean, that is true. If you compare California over the previous 100 years, there was never a year of decline in population. And California's had 3 years in a row of decline in population.
It started before COVID, right?
At COVID, 2020.
Okay.
So technically I would call that kind of is a mass exodus.
But why is it not showing in like the home prices then? Like
good question. I don't know. It is a little. I mean, my house has fallen 5%.
I know, but who's buying the excess surplus, the excess inventory to keep prices like high?
But there isn't much inventory. That's what Joey was just saying, which I agree.
Actually, can I share here? Let me give me 3 seconds.
I mean, there's I don't share. For the last year, I have not seen a house for sale in my community. No for sale signs. And it used to be there was always at least one up.
You think it's because everyone moved out, or they like Corona?
I think, like I was just saying, the fact that interest rates are like nearing 8% and they're locked in at 2 or 3.
No one's gonna sell, huh?
Yeah. Why do they want to pay 3 or 4 times as much in interest?
So then that should keep prices where they're at then for the
That's what
foreseeable future.
that's what this guy was saying that I was watching. He said he thinks interest rates will be the biggest barrier in terms of a collapse in the housing
Unless you start
market.
seeing more policy in California to where more people say, I'm out of here.
Right.
But
Well,
Okay, can you guys see-
like really a mass
Can I see
exodus
my
then.
screen?
yeah.
I'm looking at these just the numbers.
Ooh, wow. Yes, we
Uh,
can.
Okay. So this is the entire, unfortunately, I can't go past January 2008, which is unfortunate. But this is the entire MLS. I went to months supply of inventory.
And this is
So
Orange
as you
County. Orange County.
no, entire MLS. So this is America.
So
This would
okay,
be
United
America.
States. All right.
America.
So see what I'm saying? We're at February of 2023, 1.9, and it's been virtually higher
So that 1.9
every
represents
single
2 months of inventory, basically.
exactly. Yep. And,
Okay.
and that would mean no new inventory coming out. What month supply inventory means, if no new homes come on the market and the buyers would just buy up everything that's active, it would take 1.9 months to get to zero. That's what
Okay.
that means.
Got it.
So here, November of 14, it would take 5.7 months to get to zero without any new inventory. So what we're talking about is what happened in 2007 before the, kind of crash. We can't see that, but see how
That's when I
almost
bought my
assure
house, though.
you-
I remember how it was back then.
I can almost assure you the inventory was right around like over here. We had like 6 months of inventory in 2005, 6, and 7. Obviously, this was the peak. 17.6 months of inventory. Like that's just nuts.
Wow. Yeah, when
And
I
see,
was
we're the
looking, it
lowest-
was like low, like it wasn't like a huge inventory back then either. But it after I bought, inventory started going up. Like right after I bought.
Exactly. So, and then I'll stop sharing my screen after this. But as you see today, we're roughly the lowest we've ever been.
Wow.
Roughly. I think there's one
Mhm.
more month of to the January of 2022.
So what does that tell you then? Like it can only go up there.
Well, it tells me that yeah, potentially it could only go up. The other thing it tells me is that we've never had a time in history where prices have come down when inventory is virtually
Non-existent. Yeah.
Now, I do think it could happen because it's a funky market right now to where demand is definitely cooled off. It has. I mean, I've seen it. It's
Mhm.
definitely cooled
Demand
off,
from
but
who? Buyers or
haven't
sellers
seen
or
prices
both?
come down more than like 3 or 4 or 5%. I just haven't seen that yet.
But demand down for who? Buyers or sellers?
Both probably.
Demand down for less buyers there's less homes selling over the last
Yeah.
6 months, less transactions closed.
So
Doesn't that typically mean more buyers should be calling you then?
In a sense, but no, because they're not incentivized to buy. Prices are still super high.
So you got like
Now rates are more
stagflation.
than double.
Stagflation.
Got it. Yeah. So we call this the golden handcuff. Your home's worth so much money, you have so much equity in your home, but once you move, you're effed. Like straight up, you're
Wow.
effed. Because
Wow.
and you're paying a rate that's 4 times higher than what you're probably locked in at.
You got it. Exactly. So all my clients who own a home but want to make a move, they got that golden handcuff because once they make a transaction, they lose that 2.5 to 3.5% rate. Now you got to go get a double rate and a higher price. It's like, dang, man, that's it's a hard pill to swallow. But that's why that's one of the reasons less transactions are happening. Because most of the buyers that want to buy, they're waiting for prices and or rates to come down. One of them.
That's why I'm worried.
That's
why I'm worried about California then. As
Well,
somebody who owns a home there, all of us.
Yeah.
If it continues to be unsustainable to afford something in California for the next decade, right? And you get this family, let's say you have a family, they have their current house right now. They're growing, their income's growing, but they're like, we can't buy a bigger house here because our income's not growing at proportionate to the home prices here. But I can sell and just start a new life in
Elsewhere.
Nevada, Arizona.
And that is happening, by the way.
That's, in my opinion, that's the only way it makes sense to sell your house in California, is if you relocate to another state.
Yeah.
And because of how much more valuable your home in California is, you can sell it and buy whatever you're buying cash.
So
And
what
I've had
keeps
many
people
So you're not
from
paying an
doing it?
interest rate. They are doing it.
Or it's a low balance loan. You know, you put
Right.
70% down.
Exactly.
And I have actually several clients that are either buying cash or putting more than 50% down. So it's like, yeah, it's a sucky rate, but it's like they're
I'm
also
offsetting
their
it
money goes so much further almost
elsewhere.
anywhere else.
So do you
Yeah.
think in our lifetime, I mean, California is unique because of the weather, right? It's
Mhm.
also unique because of the politics, like inversely end of the spectrum value add. So do you think we ever get to a time right now, a home in California is probably like 3x the national average, maybe 4?
Yeah.
4? Do you think we'll ever get in our lifetime where it's only like twice the national average? Or 1.5? Like, does it ever get to that place where California is not that much different than Arizona or Nevada, and then more people just come back because of the weather?
Well, I think if that did happen, that's an interesting question. If that did happen, I mean, if your home was only worth, I guess I'm just thinking about this, only worth double. So let's say the national average is 400,000 or 350.
I think
and
that's
then you
about
pay
right.
7. Why would you pay 40% tax to live here? You know what I'm saying? Because generally people live here, yes, the weather, but generally, I mean, being from not from California, you can make more money here, right? And so if you can't really make more money and your homes don't go up in value as much as what it has before, why take the risk? You know what I'm saying? Like, I guess why take that risk? I guess you could still have your high income potentially, but I
Well,
would
because the
think
gap between, like right now, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's 4x in California, what the national average house is. If we get it to 2x, the only way that happens is if the property values in the other states collectively increase, or they stay the same and California decreases. So it sounds like it's going to be the other states increase. So then now
that
you
definitely
can sell your home there and say, well, I'm willing to pay double, but not 4 times, but I can do double because I can just sold my house in Arizona. I have equity. So I don't know. I'm just thinking which way it's
I
going to
think
go.
That does.
Go ahead, Chris.
I was just going to say, I don't even think that makes sense necessarily, because even if you could sell your house for half of what it's going to cost for another house in California, it's just with the interest rates where they're at, it just doesn't make economic sense. It's not feasible for most people, right? So if you have a house in Yuma, Arizona that you could sell for $500,000, and you can sell that, and you own your home in Yuma, Arizona for $500,000, and you're going to buy a house for $1 million in wherever in Southern California, right? So you get $500,000 down. You still have to carry your mortgage of, a little over $500,000 after closing and everything. Then you got to carry, let's just for easy math, 10% rate, opposed to your house was paid off in Arizona.
Yeah.
Just people aren't willing to do that. And
Wow.
and not only that, but they can't afford to do it oftentimes. So
Yeah.
The only thing, in my personal opinion, that would make things kind of equalize, bring things to an equilibrium, would be a true mass exodus from California, in which it's like 2008, where all those properties are available and they're just not elsewhere, right? There's not that problem elsewhere. It would
But
drive
what is it about?
prices down.
We asked our CPA this, and he's like, you can never go wrong buying a property in Southern California unless you
Well,
buy it in the ghetto, is what he said.
Well,
That's
and
offensive.
I told you what he said to me. He said specifically in red areas in California, and he's by no means a conservative. He said, you want to buy in red cities,
That
red
liberals know about money.
communities,
Red cities,
red communities,
like
right?
Redlands, literally Redlands.
Or, Laguna.
No, Laguna Beach is blue.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Newport is red.
Newport's red.
Huntington, Irvine, those
Irvine's
areas.
blue.
I don't think so.
It's probably more purple because I know what you're saying, Dan. I know what you're saying, but I would say it's more center than blue. I would think.
Okay,
Yeah, I don't know if I would go all the way blue.
fair enough.
Still
But what
values.
we should ask the CPA, what's
Yeah.
better? A red city, buying in a red city in a blue state, or buying in a red city in a red state, or buying in a blue city in a red state?
That's good. That's
Let's
a,
ask
Or
ChatGPT.
you left one out, blue city in a blue state.
Well,
well,
sure,
we
and
already
then
know the
yeah.
answer to that
Well,
one.
that we don't even
We
need to
left that
ask.
out
We
on
already know
purpose.
that's not no. That one we don't need AI or anything. We just already know intuitively.
Actually, type that in. Yeah.
Yeah, we do not. We already know blue city, blue state. No, no. Every 100 out of 100 CPAs will tell you no. The other ones are more tricky though.
Sure.
I don't know the answer. Joey's a realtor. We're the investors, but I don't know the answer.
Well, from both a political and economical standpoint, I think it makes more sense to buy in which you're favored as a landlord, or at least not opposed as a landlord.
Right.
In contrary to,
Yeah, but that's if you're buying as an investor. What if you don't care about that? You just for your own home.
sure, for your own home, I mean, there's a number of factors that go into that.
I mean, it's probably better. Well, got it, because you probably generally blue. Because I was going to say you probably prefer red and red if you could have it, but
But
generally,
they say the red states don't appreciate as fast as the
I was
blue
just
though.
yeah, that's
So
where I was going with that. But it generally blue states.
See, it's
No,
confusing, man.
yeah,
That's why I'm asking.
this is the way I would look at it. If I'm looking to buy a home, it's obviously where would I have the best economical standing, both from a career
Yeah.
as well as what taxes will I have to pay. Now, California is literally the worst state in terms of taxes, period. There's no worse state.
really?
Yeah.
I think Hawaii, no?
No, it's worse than Hawaii at this
Wow.
point. So then you have to consider, well, where am I at in, the tax table, right? Because
But how many do you think people really think that way?
well,
I know we do, but like the average Joe.
Okay, so if I don't make any money, I don't pay any
Sorry,
taxes.
Joe. Not you, man.
I don't make any money, I don't
The
pay any
average Jane.
taxes. And I moved to California, I actually will be supported by California, right? But if I'm a true taxpayer,
Yeah,
then I have to consider that. And I'm
See,
telling
but
you,
I don't
most
think...
of the people that left California in the Exodus were taxpayers.
yes.
Yeah, okay. So who's left then? I mean, and
Those who don't pay taxes. Those who don't pay taxes.
And who's gonna come back?
Well, there's still
those who don't pay
people,
taxes.
right.
I don't. Then
There's
housing's
still
fucked.
a lot of people
Housing's
that
fucked then.
haven't left yet.
Well-
But I would agree, generally, the million people that did leave, they are the taxpayers. So I mean, that's a lot of tax revenue. I'm actually curious, what that lost. But you're right. People that are coming are likely not paying taxes or coming from other countries and getting their start on that. That's totally fine. But obviously, like California, they need a lot of money. Obviously, they burn through it, and actually, not only do they burn through it, they go negative every.
Yeah.
single
So if the only people moving back are people that don't pay taxes, like what's gonna happen?
Well, then they'll
Going down.
it's just like when you have an HOA in a community, right?
Great analogy, bro.
We hate them. We hate them.
Sure, but what happens when people who are paying into the HOA leave and they're not replaced? Well, guess what? The fees go up on everybody else who does pay them.
Right.
Same thing in the tax market.
Same thing in health insurance too.
Yeah.
Yes, right.
So
Correct.
the tax has to be collected, and it's just your percentage. If your taxpayer goes up, that you're paying of that, your share.
I'm just trying to predict where this road ends for California real estate. And if what you're saying is true, everyone who's productive is leaving, and no one else who's productive has any incentive to come back, which I don't think is the case on either side, really. Then house prices are
not
gonna
only
tank.
people are
Like
leaving, but
I should
companies
sell my
have-
condo there now, like at the top. Why?
I mean,
What-
companies have left too. I mean, I think that's just it's gonna be consistently over years net negative of population. That's what I think.
Okay, so both of you steel man the argument for why real estate is still a good investment in California.
I haven't thought it's a good investment for 4 years. I told you, in my opinion, at
And
the
Joey's a
time,
realtor in California.
at the time when you were looking to rent your condo, I was telling you, I think if I were you, I'd sell it. At the
The
time, I was
price is
telling you that.
basically the same. The price basically the same.
Yep.
I mean, it's that's a great question.
I know. This is
I
what we
think
ask the hard-hitting questions. We need
You
a
know, the
steel
good
man
thing
case
about-
for me here. Steel man for me not selling my townhome there.
So the reason not to sell is
Right.
because so both the reason to sell and not sell are the same, in my opinion. because
How?
because the economy, you can't predict what's going to happen with the economy, and if inflation just goes nuts, real estate is a way to offset that inflation, right? So if you were to sell your home in California, you should immediately buy another home elsewhere, my opinion.
Okay.
But if you're not intending to do that, buy another home, then there's no point in selling your home in California if you want to have an offset to inflation, right? Which is
Okay.
your home's value. Now, the other side of that is the same thing, the economy. So people that are predicting a downfall in real estate value, and it could be right too, which is the economy, you'll lose 20%, right? So maybe you don't want to hold on to it. Maybe you don't want to buy a house right now. Maybe you just want to hold it in cash. Sell your house, hold the cash. I wouldn't do that personally, right? Like the three of us invest, and I think we should buy another property as soon as possible. Just because, like I said, I'm more concerned about,
But not in California.
but not in California. I think I'm very concerned about inflation. I don't think we've come anywhere near what's going to be
But the
coming
Feds,
down the pike.
but the Feds show they're willing to raise interest rates, and inflation seems to be stabilizing over the last 6 months.
Yeah, it's still increasing. It went up last month.
Yeah, but it's not like out of control like it
Well,
was before.
Oh, I think we
technically it
already are.
is. Technically it is, because anything over 2%, I believe, I think 3% is the head. Anything over 2 or 3% they consider not sustainable, which with the current deficit, or excuse me, with the current not deficit, but what we owe, when they have to pay the rate, national debt, when we have to pay the rates, it's unsustainable if it's over like 4%. They can't do it. Like,
Right.
No, it is
We'll
already,
default.
because I think the rates change on the debt in a year or something. Because I think that the interest on the national debt, Patrick Pet David just put a video on this.
Yeah.
The interest on the debt currently is 0.09, so it's not even a quarter of a percent. It's less than 1/10%. But I think it's going to 4%.
Yeah, see, that's not
with-
sustainable, most likely.
Even if our debt was half of what it is, it's not sustainable. So there's actually a huge problem coming that unfortunately not too many people are talking about.
So
But
that's exactly why I'm saying you want to hold real estate, right? Because if we meet that, if that occurs, if that occurs, how does the U.S. government deal with that? They print more money, right? Because they have to pay the debt, and thus it's a repeating curse, right?
But
print more money, inflation goes up.
So your advice to me is sell, but don't sell.
Yeah, I don't think you can go wrong either way.
So what do I do?
advice in the realtor in Southern California, worldwide, what I would say, hold it, because we don't know what's going to happen. What if a guy in the middle or a gal in the middle gets elected in California in 10 years, and we kind of try to rebalance? I mean, that probably won't happen, but it could. I mean, you've already done really well with it. You have a great loan. That's actually a big reason to keep the properties. You have a good loan on that property. Yeah. What are you going to do with the money? I would highly recommend not to do nothing with it. So you got to find where you're going to put it. You're going to have your expenses on that same money on the next place. It's going to be probably a lot more expensive because just that rate's going to be 7% plus. You got 3 or 4% over here. And I would want diversity in location of where I own real estate. And that property, I know it. We all know it. It's a highly rentable, highly attractive location in Orange County. So, I mean, I would just keep it. I wouldn't buy another one though. So if you had the same money, I would highly recommend go somewhere else. But since you already have it, you've owned it for years, your tax basis is super low. And you know, your loan, everything else, dude, yeah, I'd keep that son of a gun and let it roll. That's what I would do.
So I would add on to what Joey's saying. If I were going to sell, and I don't disagree with what Joey's saying, but if I were going to sell, if I were inclined to sell, I would certainly do it within the 5 years. And what I mean is, once you start renting it, you have 5 years in which the income's tax free that you derive from the sale.
Oh,
of the
really?
house.
I
You
didn't know
only
that.
have 5 years.
So
Right?
Ah,
what he's saying
After
is you have to live
5
there
years,
years of the 5 years
right?
to have the 500,000 tax exempt. So
Right.
whatever profit you have up to 500,000, as long as you're married, which you are, you can, it's tax-free income, 100%. So if you net 300,000, you get to keep 300,000.
But if you go beyond that 5 years
from the sale of the house?
from the sale, so if you go beyond that 5 years, and Joey would know better than I believe it's 5 years, right? Joey, he can rent it for 4 years and 11 months, and he gets 100% tax free.
In the last 5, how I understand it is, in the last 5 years, or within 5 years of selling it, if you have lived in there 2 years out of the 5 years.
So he only has 3 years then.
Correct. So you have
Okay.
to live there 2 years of the 5 years. They count it as your primary residence, and then you can. This is for an investment property or
So I
second.
only have one more year then.
Okay, so if
Yeah.
you're gonna sell, then you have to sell in the next year. Let's just assume Joey's right.
But
which
if
I
it's
have
your
no reason.
legit primary home, as long as you live there 2 years and a day, you're good. So you can live there 10 years, 20 years, sell it, and then up to 500,000 is a tax is exempt.
So you have a year
On the
left,
capital gains.
right? So you
Yeah.
have a year left in which you pay no taxes on any revenue generated
From when I
Any
bought the
net
house to
profit.
when I sold it.
from
Yeah.
when you moved out.
Yeah.
Yep. So
Okay.
yeah.
So whatever net profit, so after selling, commissions, paying off the loan, the expenses, whatever that bottom number is, 100,000, 200,000, 400,000, you would, as long as you have lived there within 2 years of the last 5,
I did not know that.
then that counts as you
So-
can be take 100% profit and not pay taxes on that.
So back to my
Up
advice.
to 5.
If I go beyond that mark, that threshold, I would not sell it. Period.
Ever.
Yeah.
Period. Until I knew exactly what's going on in everything economically, right? Interest rates and everything else.
So as an investor, all right, no longer a resident of California, but I might move back. I might be one of those contrarian to move back, but you guys basically for the last 20 minutes told me there's very little upside to keeping it there. And the worst that can happen is this is what Dr. Joe says. Electromagnetic tides shift, tidal wave knocks out all of California.
Mm-hmm.
Or it just gets so tyrannical that so the downside's like basically 0, and the upside's very little. Is basically
the
argument for
so
keeping
again,
that.
There was 2 parts to you selling. Again, it has to be in the
I
next
don't know
year.
if I would say very little upside. I don't know if I would say that, but go ahead, Chris.
You think the house has a chance to double in my lifetime?
In your lifetime,
Yeah.
sure.
Again, from where it is now?
Sure, but that's true of anywhere.
Okay.
In my
Probably
opinion.
in 4 15 years you'll double.
Think it will quadruple in my lifetime?
Possibly. But then
Yes.
again, I think that could be true of many places.
Yeah.
That's true too. Yes.
So again, if it were me, I would only sell your property under 2 conditions, right? Again, within the next 1 year that you have to get 100% untaxed revenue. And whatever you buy, you can pay cash for, or carry very little mortgage.
It's not bad.
Because
Chris, I like that.
So if this upside, even if you live in California, let's say you've never bought a home, and let's say you're a millennial, married, you're making 200K a year. No, let's make it a little less. 150K a year collectively, you and your wife. Okay. You're in your mid-30s. you never wanted to buy because you can't afford it. You can't afford the down payment, and so you just rent. And you rent nice, like you live in Irvine in a nice house, but you're renting it. What's the case for them to buy a house in California?
Oh, to me, easy.
Their career, their connections.
I mean, wealth, baby. Wealth. I mean, if I was in that situation, again, I'm biased. I'm a realtor in Orange County, so my office is in Irvine. But I mean, to me, even if you're in a weird place, well, bro, 100% of your rent goes out the door. So it's like 100% of your rent goes to paying off your landlord's debt. I guarantee you, your landlord has debt on that property, and you are paying up that. So it's like, in that case, you make 150. It's a huge stretch to buy. I mean, dude, this is all of California, by the way. Number one.
Yeah, let's say that house they're renting. If they wanted to buy that house they're renting, would be $800K, and they're like, nah, I'd rather pay $3,500 a month just to stay here and not have to deal with having to buy a place like
that's everybody in Orange County. Yes, that's everybody under 30 in Orange County. But to me, the pros outweigh the cons. I mean, I don't know what the pro is of renting. The pro of buying and paying a little bit
the
more
cheap
per
rent.
month.
No?
Well, they've done studies
Not by
on
much,
this.
maybe $500 a month less.
But they've done studies.
Your mortgage payment is 1/3 of your mortgage payment for the first 7 years goes towards paying off your debt.
But that down payment then, like for this family, what would they have to put down for that 800?
Borrow and steal. Do 3.5% down. And I mean, one of the reasons is their rent's probably 500. Yeah, dude, I put 3.5% down. Maybe stop renting at $3,500 a month. Go do a 1 or 2 bedroom. Save up your freaking money, and sacrifice so you can get out of the rat race. I mean, how much has rent gone up in 10 years? So it's like, when you buy a property, I mean, both of you guys own real estate. How much have your mortgage payment gone up? It hasn't since you closed. So you lock in your monthly payment, then you get tax benefits, you get potential appreciation, and then you're in freaking control of, I mean, in my opinion, you're in control of your life financially, and you're out of the effing rat race. This is 80% of Orange County.
But do you think that monthly payment, let's say that $800,000 home, okay, you put down go ahead.
Hang on. I just want to say I've read some studies on this, right? They've done surveys on this. And most people who can't buy, right, they generally don't buy until their mortgage is cheaper than their rent, right? So whatever they have for a down, no, it does happen
cheaper than
their rent.
I don't know.
So
that makes sense.
So when they have a down payment, X dollars, whatever their down payment is, and they can put that down on a house, and then they calculate out, hey, our rent is this, is our mortgage that or less? Okay, now it's time to buy. That's when people buy.
So if we're waiting for that, it's not going to happen unless rent.
No, it happens
in California.
It happens.
No,
it happens.
It will not happen in California.
Oh, it happened in 2008 though. It happened in 2008, 2009, 2010.
Look, I would look that up. I bet it did not. Rents did not go down.
No, I'm not saying rents go down. That's not what I said. It's not what I said at all. What I said was when their mortgage is cheaper than renting is when people buy.
Yeah. So for that to happen in California right now, rents would have to decrease drastically.
Not necessarily. That's not true.
Or prices would have to come down 50%.
No. So no, you're reverse stating it. For people to buy more, that
ratio, one of those have to change.
Right. So rent can go up, and then your mortgage can become cheaper.
Rents can go up too.
Yes. If rents go up and real estate prices don't change and rents go up, it becomes cheaper to now you got to understand this.
You just still mad my reason to keep my house. Rents can go up.
Well, I think that's the dumbest thing ever, because I don't think anybody could actually articulate a legit argument that it's better. Besides, let's say you move somewhere and you're trying to get to know the location, you're better tenfold to buy, even if it costs you a little bit more monthly per month, but I could do the numbers to where if you look at it a 12-month period, you're actually probably par.
See,
even if you're paying monthly $500 more per month. But I think it's the dumbest thing to hear. Oh, I'm only gonna buy a property if it's equal or less than.
see,
This is why
I disagree with you,
80%
Joe. I can give you
can't
proof
buy-
on what I can give you data
this
on
is
how
the
you're
same-
wrong.
I love this discussion.
It's
Yeah.
So-
good. But
so,
this is the same reason. Well, real quick, this is the same reason why 80% of Americans can't handle a $500 unexpected expense.
Oh, of
So
course,
go ahead.
of course,
Yeah.
of course. But from 2008 to 2012, mortgage values fell, right? So if
or home value, yes, yeah,
yeah,
dramatically.
right, real estate prices fell from 2008 to 2012. So anywhere in there, it made more sense for you to rent, right? Until you hit the bottom. Anywhere in there made more sense to rent.
No, I would
Joey's
say
How?
still not. He's not
How?
to be convinced.
How are you, Joey? Think about it. So you have to pay
Easy.
property taxes.
I'll
You have to
fight
pay. Well, hang on. So if to buy a home, it's $2,000 a month, right?
it has nothing to do with the monthly payment. To me.
Oh, it absolutely does.
I think on
it absolutely-
affordability for this family, like this
Joey,
hypothetical family, I think that's why I asked. I really don't know because the
I'm
reason
just saying my thoughts. I would say even
well,
in
no,
two-
it's not. It's
yeah,
not a matter of
I think-
opinion. This is objective. This is
the
not
reason I brought
subjective.
up this topic
Oh,
though is
I
like
am very objective. You're a moron if you rent for years, paying somebody else's mortgage, even if prices are
So
going down. You're a
I would.
moron.
Well,
Objective.
Joey, I'm not trying to be offensive here, but I would consider you a
No,
moron
I don't
the
take
other
it.
way. Because Joey, if you can save
Chris and Dad show,
$30,000,
guys.
if you can save $100,000 over 3 years of renting opposed to buying, and then you have $100,000 more at the end of that 3 years to go towards your purchase price, you get 100,000 more, which is the argument here, because that's probably what you would say.
What you would keep.
Yeah,
You're
absolutely.
only looking at 2 or 3 years. That
But that's my
yeah,
point, Joey.
look at the
It's
buyer-
there.
no, listen. If you're
Yeah,
looking
because
to buy or sell in 2 years or flip a house, yeah. But dude, in those 2 years, even if
But
you
you're
bought
saying
at the high-
you're saying somebody is a moron for saving $100,000. That makes
No.
absolutely no sense.
no.
Well, that's what you
might
just said.
think- no, you might think you're saving 100,
No, but you are.
$200,000.
No, hindsight's 2020, but you were. If in
What has prices
2008
done? Hold on.
it-
What has prices done since 2008?
they went down until 2012, Joey.
Oh.
The bottom was in late 2011.
Are
was the
they
bottom.
higher today?
Yeah, but again, Joey, you're making an argument outside of what I'm saying to you.
And-
Joey's
and
arguing the macro,
paying
Chris
off
is
your
on the
debt.
micro.
You're
Yeah,
paying off your debt.
What I'm
your
saying,
tax
so
benefits.
you're not thinking
But
like
I think you're still net positive. If you're only if
sure, if you
sell-
bought in 2008 and you held till now, you're a net positive. My argument
Hey,
is
that was me. That was me.
if you bought in 2008 opposed to 2011, you're at a huge louse.
Yeah.
And that's
that
my
would be me
argument.
too.
That's
You-
my
you-
argument on why people rent, because that's the way they look at it. Housing
still
prices
think
are falling.
You guys are actually
I'm
both
going to
right.
try and time it,
You're both right.
I know, but nobody
because-
can time it. That's
but that's what they're doing.
You're making
That's
an
exactly what they're
argument
doing.
based on you knew that 2010 was the
Sure.
bottom.
Ah,
But I would never give anybody this advice. Nor honestly, Chris, nor would
in any time. In
You're
any
no,
just
time.
saying-
No, I wouldn't. You're
because
right.
I knew what happened. So if you look at a timeline and you could time it, sure. Would I personally prefer to buy in 2010 versus 2020? Or excuse me, instead of 2008, then to buy in 2010? Sure. But bro, you don't know that information.
So
So
I understand that. What
you
my
gotta
argument?
play this fair. So my counsel is you don't know what the freaking market's going to be. You don't
I-
know what it is going to do or not.
I don't
Prices
disagree
can
with
come
you.
down, prices can come up. All I know is long term. I would never buy a property and only try to keep it 1 or 2 or 3 years. I would want to keep a property more than 7 years. So you should buy, hold it, stop paying somebody else's mortgage,
Mhm.
and 100% of your payment isn't going to somebody else.
Refi when needed.
To
Refi
me,
when needed.
that's,
I
to me,
don't
that's why I would say you're a moron for renting in that situation.
So, but you have to understand that there's other variables involved here, right? And that is people can only afford what they can afford, right? So,
Affordability. It always has to come
Yeah, but
back
it's
to
not
that.
that
no?
much different.
Well,
Ah,
that again, that was my argument though. So the way that many people look at it, again, you can look up surveys on this.
I'm not
is-
saying that you're wrong what people look at. I'm just
Sure.
saying this is why they only have less than $500 for an unexpected expense.
Yeah,
They're morons.
Yeah, I don't know if that's true, Joey, but
Well, it is 87%. What's his name?
well, most people live paycheck to
Dave
paycheck.
Ramsey.
Most
What?
people live paycheck. Yeah, Dave Ramsey, but most people live paycheck to paycheck. So
So
it's unfortunate they can't even if they
well, I
wanted
think
to
I understand.
save money.
Joey's saying in the macro scheme, they're morons because instead of wasting money on those 3 years to rent, they could, even if they're paying more than they would be renting, they're in a way it's a forced savings for them.
and you're
So
paying
by
fixed.
that argument, it doesn't matter when you buy, as long as you hold it long enough and refi when you need to, it's
Sure.
a forced saving. So you're a moron for not doing that. Chris is saying, well, you're a moron if you're paying twice as much for a mortgage than a rent
If
when you could
happen
just
to
wait a
know
little
that
bit.
for a fact.
Well, what most
Yeah.
people do is, again, they just, and I agree with you. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't think things through correctly.
More than a couple years, right? Yeah.
Right. Well, many people can't see beyond tomorrow, but
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's the way they look at their finances, right? If I'm saving $500 a month now by renting opposed to buying, it makes sense
Yeah.
for me to continue renting.
But how far does that gap have to be? This is why I brought this up, especially in California. Like, what is the difference now between like this millennial family that I made up?
Well, dude,
Renting
that's
in
a lot of my
Irvine?
clients. Yeah.
Like,
It's
what's a rent?
not-
What's a rent for like a $800,000 nice home in Irvine? What's the rent on it right now?
Dude, if you would ask me a couple years ago, it'd be dramatically different. But today, let's say 800,000, which would be a condo or townhome.
Okay.
That would be roughly 3 bedrooms. And that would be honestly 800, about $4,000 a month, $37 to $4,000 a month is what
And
that
then,
would
okay.
be.
And then for them to put
Because
three and a
actually,
half
Jen, what are
down,
you getting? You're getting 30, or you
33,
don't have
33.
okay. So let's say 37
Okay. And then for them to put 3.5 down
in Irvine.
and buy that house right now, how much are they paying? Roughly. Decent
So
credit.
they would roughly probably $700 more per month. They put 3.5% down, with rates where they're at today, taxes, this or that. So instead of 37, what is that, Chris? 45, roughly. 46.
Yeah.
Don't know what you guys are trying to figure.
No. So
the doctor
basically,
texted me.
so basically
he's
it's
trying to figure out
7.
monthly payment difference.
So basically it's 7 to
roughly that
800 different.
example, $700 plus more expensive to own it per month if you're only looking at it a monthly cost. But if you look at that, I mean, here, let's do the
Because that's
4,700
that's still significant, no? For like an Orange County family,
divided
like
by
a
3. Yeah, but this is how much you're paying, $1,566 a month, paying off your debt. So that's going in your back pocket. So you get that. Then you'll likely have a couple $1,000s a year in tax incentive. So like that's what I'm saying. At the end of the year, if you look at it, yeah, it is costing you more money, but it's not out the door, out of your pocket like rent is. So
yeah.
$3,700, 100% of that is gone, but out of that 4,600 or 4,500, over $1,500 goes to pay off your $800,000 loan, or let's say $750 loan. You get a couple grand a year for tax benefits, and that, again, we're not even talking about appreciation, because you can't necessarily
Interest,
control
right.
that.
Right off.
So in my opinion, they're probably pretty close to what they're paying. It's just that they have some forced savings with that.
So then we should see, like, they're millennials, it's well known millennials are the first generation that rent more than they own, and not just because they're young, because yeah, and not just because they're young. I mean, the oldest millennials like my age, like 42, and it goes all the way down to like 25, I think, like that age range right now. So
Well,
those are people in their prime of their, like, they should be buying homes. Most other generations prior to millennials bought home by this age. This is the first one that is not, and it doesn't sound like they're gonna start anytime soon.
well, there's an important factor in that, right? They have to qualify. Yeah, I mean, they may very much desire to buy a home, but
I think they do.
for many reasons they may not qualify. They may not have the income.
But do they
to
not
sh-
qualify any differently
That's
than previous
rarely,
generation? Like the
in my boots on the ground, that's rarely the reason. It's they don't have the cash for the down payment. They do qualify. They make good money. It's just that they, because
so
of their, in my personal opinion, their spending habits, they don't have the down payment.
so the bank would approve whatever their mortgage would be.
If they had 3.5%, 5% down,
Sure, if they
yes.
had the down payment.
It's fairly uncommon that I come across. It's fairly uncommon for someone millennial that they both have jobs making that 150 a year. Dude, they're going to qualify. They have okay credit. They have the income. They don't. The everyday challenges. They don't have the down payment. They don't have that, whatever that is. So,
But
So
I know
it-
so many people in Orange County or in SoCal in that demo that refuse to buy and say I never will.
So
Like, I
if
don't understand why.
you make 150K a year, right? What, just simple math, because I'm not familiar with how banks look at it, but it used to be you qualified for 3 times your annual income.
I don't know what the rule is.
You don't know what the rule is
I don't
anymore?
pay attention to it. No.
Okay. Because, if you think about it, if it's even,
It's more than that, though. I
It's,
can
Right,
that
but it-
has to be in California. I mean,
but even if it's 5 times, right, that puts you at 750. So it'd have to be 6 times
So
your
I
annual
think
income.
one of the problems is that, so not only is it the down, but it's also the millennial expectation. They want the $1 million house on
yeah.
their purchase. So
And
Sure.
they rather rent
I-
it if they can get it, right?
or
That's
they
the
rent
thing.
something similar. They actually don't rent that $1 million because that's also extremely expensive with rent. But they just are renting. They, for some reason, they still rent similar to what they probably qualify for. But they're just waiting to buy because they think, oh, I want to buy that $1 million house on my first one. If you look outside of California, like when I graduated college, a lot of my friends back home where I'm from, they were actually buying a single family home, after a couple years of college, because those homes are closer to the average national average home values. So that's what a 1 bedroom condo is in Orange County.
Man,
So
Joey, back to your
the expectation is, and I'll finish at this, the expectation of the consumer, at least in Southern California, is, dude, screw this. I don't want to spend all this money on a condo. They don't want that. They want that instant gratification and get that $1 million house. And they see that that's unachievable. So they just rent, which I'm happy with because they can rent my properties. Go ahead, pay my mortgage.
I know, but as California property owners as well, sure, we can rent our properties to them. But at what point is that no longer a good thing because prices don't appreciate as fast also?
But it does.
If you don't have
Rents are going up. So that's the thing. If there's going to be, and I'm seeing it, higher and higher demand for rent when people don't buy houses, period.
higher demand
This happened in
for
2008. This is why rents
for
went up
rent?
even in
For rent.
2008, 9, and 10, and 11, and 12, and throughout today, is because less people were buying houses and they needed to rent. So
Wow.
therefore, rent goes up. So rents they're so far up today than where they were just 2.5, 3 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, dude, look at the rent.
But the
Dan,
market's supposed to
you and
correct
I were
itself,
talking
right?
about.
Isn't the market supposed to correct itself? Like, okay, when rents get too far out of whack compared to mortgages,
People buy more then, right? That's why it's always in flux, right?
but they only buy more if the prices are lower, though. This
Not
is why I don't
necessarily.
understand how this
No, that's not true. If rents go up exponentially, more people will buy if mortgages aren't doing the same. Right. And they
Right.
qualify and they
Have you
qualify.
seen, Chris, have you seen, because I guess I personally haven't seen a crash in rents in my
I don't
research.
remember any crash.
Like I said, and again, I could be wrong here. I know I've said this before with the 3 of us, but I'm almost certain when I moved from Washington State to Temecula, because that's where I was looking to rent when I moved down here, that over like a year period of time, because I looked for about a year, that rent fell about 200 a month for comparable rental properties. I think
Okay.
it fell like 200 a month over that
Roughly,
time
okay.
span. I
Wow.
believe. I could be wrong, but that's the way I remember it.
I'm not necessarily saying, yeah. And I think in short term, like that, I think maybe within a year as stuff was figuring itself out, I think that that's a possibility. But I just haven't really seen too much of that. I haven't heard that many of stories that show that. Now rents, I mean, Dan, when you and I were talking early 2020 about renting out your property in California, that price to what you have today, I mean,
Very different. Yeah.
it's very different than you know what I'm saying? So like now, I would never set your expectation that that's going to happen every single year. But I mean, rents have absolutely scaled beyond anybody's belief over the last 2.5, 3 years. And so, to me, dude, yes, is it going to be a stretch to buy if you're a millennial making 150, you're paying $3,500 a month in rent? Dude, go get a smaller property or rent not in freaking Irvine, and instead of having super expensive car payments, like have some delayed gratification like Dave Ramsey talks about. And dude, in 2, 3, 4 years, you can have that 3.5% down. But to me, I guess what I'm frustrated with is I see people that make good money. They drive super nice cars. They Uber eat everything to them. And they bitch and complain that they can't buy a property. And to me, I just think it's completely a choice.
That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about.
Short term, like, yeah, if I just moved to a different area, like Chris, if I was you coming from Washington to Temecula, would I rent for a year, maybe more, to try to figure out where I want to raise my family? Absolutely. So renting has its place, but I guess don't bitch to me if you're living the Southern California lifestyle. Oh, I don't have the 3.5% down. Bullshit. You do. You're just spending it.
Well, that's the way people have been raised, though. I mean, not picking on parents in general, but yeah, that's just the way they've been raised, right? They're not told no about anything. They're not given, they're not disciplined. They're not saying, here, learn self-control.
Guess what?
Just made excuses for.
Guess what the millennials are known? I mean, they're known for being the first generation that's gonna like maybe never adopt home ownership in the masses, like in the majority, right?
Oh, sad.
Gen Z's right behind them. But guess what? Millennials are also the first generation that grow up in their prime, where the US, I don't know if it's quality of living or like the relative earning power is less than the generation before them.
Standard of living.
Standard of living. It's
falling.
always been higher. So
right.
Maybe those two things are not independent. Maybe they have something to do with one another.
And they very well could. Hey, I'm just not trying to change topics here, but going back to something we were just discussing.
Yeah.
I'm at all of our favorites banking website, Chase, at their website. And they said there's a 28% mortgage rule, at least for Chase, that you should spend 20%, 28% or less of your monthly gross income on your mortgage. And that's what they apply. That's their standard.
The same thing, but it's not.
That's their standard.
So most people earn in Orange County, what, 10K a month?
Probably more than that, I would guess. Yorba Linda, it's like 15K a month.
Okay, but like let's just take Orange County average. So Orange County average.
That's just not true. It's probably like 50%, if not more, goes to housing.
Yeah, because 10%, 20% of 10K. I think what the average income in Orange County, if you just take Orange County, it's less than 10K a month.
Oh yeah, it's well under. Yeah. I'm looking at it now on Google.
So what is it?
According to Google, Orange County population median income is $37,499. I don't even know how they live on that.
Okay, so that monthly income is about 4K a month. So you're telling me
that's
Chase says
that's 3K a month.
Okay, let's say 3K a month.
Now that's per individual though. So
okay, so let's say 6.
Yeah.
So okay, 6. So 20% of that is $1,200. Should be your mortgage. That's what I'm saying. This is a joke, man. Where
It's
where
nowhere.
are we in the affordability conversation? Those are archaic. So, but we have no new standards. Real estate just became research. No
Well,
standards,
no,
just
seriously. Well,
guidelines.
I think the new standards, I mean, think of how much the average household, if you look at it this way, think of how much the average household has to pay for today versus 30 years ago when our parents were starting out.
Okay.
Maybe 40 years ago.
Sorry.
Netflix, cell phones, laptops, blah, 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 blah. You know, I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on, you know? So it's like your overall, you feel, you have so much more shit to pay for. And so, I mean, I think life 30 years ago was much more simple, so there's less stuff for your money to go. But I mean, dude, the average American, I mean, we were below middle class growing up, and dude, we couldn't go on major vacations or this or that, but most of my parents' money went to paying for the dang house. And I think that's great. I'm glad that they bought their house.
Yeah, because it's
and they
equity.
exactly. And like most Americans, their retirement is in their home. You
Okay,
know,
but I'm worried about this millennials in future because look at if
just
the
a
average
minute.
income is 6K per
Well, hey,
couple.
before you go on with that thought, just real quick. So I went to another website, Bankrate,
Oh, sorry.
and they say some banks will approve up to a maximum of 43% towards your mortgage. 43%. That's the max.
So
That's the absolute max.
These macro numbers are telling me the real estate market, no matter what state you're in, is unsustainable.
Yeah. Whether it be with prices, no, it's true. It is unsustainable for a long period of time. I do agree with that. And that's why that's why pendings are down, closings are down, because we have a lot of it's bursting from the rim or whatever, bursting at the seams, excuse me. Because prices and rates are still it's almost unattainable.
And whether it's a mortgage or a rent, it's
something has to
unsustainable.
change, or they both need to change.
Yeah.
But I would still buy right now than rent. I personally would. And actually I personally did. I just bought 5 months ago. So I paid a higher rate. It was a little bit lower than it is today, but it's still a higher rate. And I paid a high price because my alternative, I know I'm still way better long-term than renting. Now, prices could come down, like Chris was saying, from 2008, prices could come down significantly, but I'm so glad I bought because I'm personally in control of my monthly payment. I know it's not going to go up. It's only going to change if I say it's going to change, if I refinance or do a cash out refinance or something like that. And a third of my payment is going towards my principal. So
you're in control. You're in more control.
I'm in control. I don't want to be like, think of, if you're a renter, this is going to resonate. If you're a renter, how many people do you know got kicked out of their rental because their landlord's selling the house? And you now have to scatter to go find another property. And guess what? I bet your rent's going to be significantly higher because you're competing with 10 other applications. So I mean, rent, it is a shit show to go find a rental in most markets, not just Orange County. In most markets, rents are extremely in demand.
Wow.
So just one other thought. I can't find a website to collaborate or state what I'm trying to say here, but it used to be that people did not buy a home that was more than three times their income, right?
I think you're right. I think I remember hearing that.
I don't know. I can't find the year that was no longer the case, but I bet you it's relatively recently, maybe 1990 or more recent. But prior to that, that was the standard, right? Banks gave you a loan at 3 times your income.
Okay.
Well,
Right? What is it
now?
now?
The reason why is because rates were 12%.
That's true too.
So prices were significantly lower. So again, this is why prices I'm not saying prices can never come down. Honestly, I'm leaning towards, I think they could, and we might just slowly get inventory coming up. But what you're saying, when prices were 100,000 in Orange County, rates were 14%.
Well, they were for a while, right? During the Reagan years, but that changed. Yeah. I mean, during Clinton's time in office, it was like 6%, basically a little lower than it is now. Bless you, Joy. I mean, the standard rate has always been around 6-7% for home mortgages. It was just during the 80s that it went crazy.
Since the 90s, since the 90s, the average is 7%,
Yeah.
not given the last 6 months. So the average, it's like 6.9 from 1990 to 2020.
Right.
I guess the metric, and someone should do a study on this. I mean, maybe someone has. I don't know if they publish scholarly papers about real estate. I'm sure economists do. I should read some, but we got to find the magic ratio between rents and mortgage rates.
Let's do it.
If somebody can figure out, maybe ChatGPT can figure this out.
I was just gonna say, bring up chat.
Oh, I don't even know what to ask it though. Like, find the difference, find the point at which, find the number at which you're more likely to just want to buy a home than rent for the same sized home. I don't know how to ask ChatGPT this, but bottom line, I think affordability in every state is bad. I think in California, it's at least double as bad as anywhere else.
It's worse, yeah.
And I don't know how that sustains long term. So I think we're kind of screwed.
So I agree with that. It's super unaffordable to buy a house, but I think the only way out of or rent, correct. But I just personally think that the only way out of that rat hole is to like bite the bullet and buy.
Yeah.
You know, because
I
think
that's only for people that think like us, though. Like the majority of the market that makes up the market are not people that think like us.
Well, here, as a real estate agent, Joe, you can use this for potential buyers. Okay. So just to make sure I was
with the Redskins hat on,
just to make sure I was speaking correctly. So I looked it up, right? If we step back and look at rates over the long term, they're still below the historic average. Freddie Mac, the main industry source for mortgage rates, has been keeping records since 1971. Between 1971 and 2023, the average rate is 7.75%. So we're still below that. So you should be able to sell a house. No problem. Right?
But
we're below historic averages.
Yeah, of rates, correct.
Yep. So
this affordability stuff's scaring me. If we could look at that cars, what happened to cars in the last year? Car prices?
Yeah, they've fallen.
Tanking.
Yeah.
That's why I haven't got my TRX yet. I'm like, I could wait another year.
Yeah, used cars had never increased to the value percentage-wise, right? That they were at like a year ago.
And used cars,
year and a half ago.
Used cars are the real estate equivalent of renting. New cars are the real estate equivalent of buying a house.
Yeah.
Right, so same demo. The same demo.
I want to hear this from you guys. So let's say, Chris, you go first, and then Dan go next. Let's say you are that person today, knowing the information you have, now. Okay. So let's say you make 150, 200 a year. You don't own a home, you're renting. Today, where the market's at. So prices are still kind of high, rates are kind of high. Would you, Chris, you go first. Would you buy right now, or would you rent and try to time the market? And you speak honestly.
Well, that's a really tough call. So this is for anywhere in the country, right? Politically speaking, I wouldn't buy in California personally, but anywhere in the country, I think I would wait for about 6 months to see what happens. I think I'd wait 6 months. I wouldn't be looking to buy tomorrow.
6 months and it's the same. Let's say 6 months happen. I'm trying to get the answer. 6 months happens exactly the same. What would you do then in 6 months?
If everything was still kind of like it is now, where it's just nobody knows, I'd probably buy. Just because I really think inflation is going to outweigh any negativity you have in buying, right? And the long-term positives outweigh the negatives in terms of buying, at least in my opinion. I just think we're really, really quickly heading towards an inflation nightmare, to the point where, and I know Dan's been preaching this for a while, to where our fiat just may become non-existent. It'll be like Mexico of the 90s, right? Where we just can't sustain our debt, right? So,
we can't.
And if that occurs, Why does it matter what you but what you it doesn't matter what you pay for your home, because inflation will be so high that you'll be able to pay off your mortgage in 1 month. You could owe $5 million and you pay that 1 month, because like in Venezuela, they were using their bills to start fires. They were so worthless. So it'd be, the more debt you have at that point, the better.
Exactly.
Right?
Yep.
So that's the way
first
that's
option
my
would be
concern.
wait 6 months, and then I said, okay, everything's the same. What would you do? And you said you would probably reluctantly like buy. And I honestly, I think you're right. And I think that a lot of people feel that way. They're like, I'm kind of 65, 70%.
Yeah, on the fence, like right on the middle of the fence.
Right on. Yeah. Yeah. But you're choosing the right direction. I mean, I'm kidding. Okay, Dan, realistically, what would you do? Let's say you're moving to where you moved to in Arizona. You were going, oh, well, no, I don't want that example because let's say it's new. But let's say you're renting right now. You've been where you're at for 2 years. Would you buy today your primary?
Yes.
Okay.
Like in instant. I mean, yeah, whether I move somewhere else or rent in where I'm currently am, I would want to buy, because you could, like, the debt is, it's actually a good thing to have debt in an inflationary period.
Environment. Yes, as long as inflation keeps increasing, it's optimal to have more debt.
And if affordability was the issue, I would buy a smaller place than what I'm renting. I mean, I think it's just in the end, it's just better to own. But that's easy. The harder one is to ask if you're going to invest in a rental or invest in something else, because with affordability, I'm worried about rents tanking at some point.
So the only upside to waiting on buying, in my opinion,
I want to go back to that, Dan.
Is obviously obviously housing prices could fall. And, a lot of content that I've been taking in seems to imply that could happen over the next 6 months. And the reason is because builders have continued building when there is nobody there to buy. And there's just
slowed down, but yes, they are still building. You're right.
Right. So there could potentially be too many houses on the market here very shortly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
with no buyers.
If I bought and then 6 months later the value of my home halved because there was a housing crash, which actually happened when I bought in Anaheim, right? Chances are rates would also lower at that point. Like the Fed would at least stop raising rates at that point. I would try to buy another house and rent the one I'm at, even if it's at a loss. And just now I'd own 2 homes.
Well,
even if I'm losing.
As Joey and I already brought up, I mean, the Fed has no options. At some point, they have to lower rates. They just have to.
Yeah.
Just like they did in 2020. They're going to have to significantly.
Yeah, this is complicated. This real estate stuff is complicated.
I thought it was going to happen already, to be honest. I thought we would have already been 5 or 4% by December.
Well, I'm really disappointed that I've never read a white paper. Like in medicine, they write white papers all the time on stuff. In real estate, somebody needs to do this. Write white papers on relationship between rents and mortgages and at what inflection. I'm sure it's done somewhere, but
rent and prices, yeah.
Yes, and in every market.
What were you saying about, so like say right now, buy another rental because rents. So I guess what do you think, or do you think rents could go down over the next 5 years? How about that? Or 2 years or whatever.
I think so. I think rents in most major markets. Let's take our Plano house as an example. That's not California. Okay, that's a more affordable place to live. Even for Dallas, it's expensive, but compared to California, it's cheap, right? Our Plano house, what were we renting it out for? I can't remember.
$2,850.
And what was our mortgage?
16 something.
Okay, so easy answer, perfect situation. Let's rent it. Well, would we be as excited if our mortgage was $1,600 and our rents gradually decreased to where it was $1,300?
No, I mean, excited.
I'm just saying,
that's what I'm worried about, buying at the top of the rental market as a landlord and getting that timing wrong. Because then you're screwed. You have a fixed rate.
But okay, so you have two options, right? One is inflation continues, rents go up. everything goes up with inflation, right?
Yeah.
Which I think is way more likely. But
Right.
you also have the probability that with that inflation comes like a Great Depression type environment where there's 30% unemployment. Now,
Yeah.
in that situation, who knows what happens, right? Because people aren't working, they can't pay rent, but at the same time, inflation is just extraordinary. So it just kind of becomes a bidders market in terms of, you know,
That I think would be the only cause of rent going down is unemployment is so high
right.
that
But like
that
historically, do rents just keep increasing? Like no matter what? Like are they
No,
just like house prices? Like
yes.
no, I think there's fluctuations just like with housing, right? Where housing does crash a little bit.
as wild as housing? Or
All
I don't
I'd
know.
say is just I would show me when rents have crashed.
Well,
That's all
I'm gonna Google
Yeah.
right now.
yeah, maybe a good point. Maybe rents never crashed.
I have not. Yeah, I haven't seen it.
And
You
maybe
know,
the growing case for millennials preferring to rent is strong steelman the argument to real estate investments as safe as
I
they
mean, I
come.
think with rents, besides that extreme of unemployment, which I would say that's a possibility, that would be what I would be concerned for. But if less people are buying their primary nationwide, rents are going to
Yeah.
continue being high. There's going to be more like you'll have the same supply, but now you have more demand for that same supply, and that's just only going to consistently like grow. So it's like I would just have a I don't want to say impossible, but it would be very, I think every year it's more unlikely that rents would go down.
Okay, so I put it in the Google. Does rent ever go down? Right. So it says here the first thing that comes up in California, average monthly rents increased 22% from 2021 to 2022. Wow, that's a lot. Jumping
That's a bad one to look at. Yeah, because
right. But then
it go up the most.
Then it continues. However, a handful of major cities saw rent prices decrease significantly.
Well, I wouldn't look at it 2020 to 2020 because you had where people didn't work for a period of time
And people weren't paying.
I wouldn't look at that. I would look at over the last 50 years or 60 years.
Sure.
Have rents come down, period.
Well, rents come down relative to inflation. Because rents are gonna just keep going up because the value of the dollar just like if you go over the last 50 years, rents are gonna keep up with inflation. But do
Exactly.
they ever dip
Below inflation?
Yeah. I think that the easiest answer is rent follows prices of homes.
So
and they just always go like long term, they always go up.
Always. Yeah.
So here's another article
rent follows prices
that gives since 1940. It initially goes by decades, then it goes by every 5 years. So I would say in 1990, so rents did go up, but it didn't keep up with inflation. There's many years of that, right? 2005, same thing. The average rent throughout the United States went up 0.07%.
In 2005?
From 2000 to 2005, it went up 0.07%, right? So that's not keeping pace anywhere near with inflation, right? Because inflation is always 2% or more a year. And there's plenty of these. 2000,
but I would say that's much less in 5-year period for it to be way less than 1%. Yeah, that's
so it starts going on a yearly basis from 2010. So 2010 to 2011, rent increased almost 8%. 11,
wow.
In 2010 went up nearly 8%.
Wow.
2011, 3.5%. 2012, 2%. 2013, 1.7%. 14, the same. 2015, 0.87%. 16, 2.2. 17, 3.4. 18, 4.1. 19, 3.8. 2020, 3.2. And then almost 10% every year thereafter, 21, 22, and 23.
Yeah, but we can ignore 2020, 21 because that's I wouldn't want to run my numbers moving forward.
But that is a good indication, Joey, what happens with inflation, right? How it kind of keeps pace. I would have to pull out a calculator. I would guess around 3.
7.5.
I would guess around 3% because there was a couple of years that were below 1. Quite a few years that it was around 2, and the rest were above.
Still, I mean, didn't it really go down?
No, it didn't go down at all. But to Dan's point, compared to inflation, it didn't keep pace with inflation either. But
yeah,
you don't necessarily have to have it keep pace with inflation.
That's true,
necessarily.
because your
I just
interest,
want it
your
to go up.
mortgage, your mortgage,
That's all I want.
like when you buy a
Sure.
house, your mortgage is fixed, hopefully. So you don't even have to worry. And the price you bought it at is fixed. So you're kind of keeping up with inflation just by buying the house itself.
Yep.
So now the mortgage, you're just playing with the mortgage and the rent. So as your mortgage is fixed and you fix it at the right rate, you're good. If
Yep.
you know, and then even if you didn't, you can always refi it if you hold out long enough. So I guess at the end of the day, it's better to just buy.
Yeah. Well, and
I think
would
that
say rents, or it won't be like a necessarily an exact straight line. Like, so I would say, even though that between 2000 2005, I'm actually pretty surprised it was way less than 1%. But you might have 1%, then 4%, and then and so it's like over time as you hold, yes, you're on average 3, 4, 5%, whatever. Let's say 3%, but it's still trending upwards. It might not be an exact straight line, but exactly. I mean, that's what you're saying, Dan. This is why,
yeah.
when you buy, make sure you have cash flow.
And honestly, man, I think I just steel manned the argument for myself. If you're a
Well,
renter, and any renter watching, you have
so
more control over your mortgage than you do your rents, because let's say you bought your house and your mortgage and rents go up. Well, you could move out of your house and rent it to someone. Or let's say rents go down. Well, you can just live in your house, and when you need to refinance, you can refinance. But when you're renting, you don't have control. It's just you do what the market says, and that's it.
so
You do what I say.
so unemployment.
Whatever I say, you're right. That's what you do.
And there's a price to pay for that. It should be more expensive to control.
Unemployment does directly impact rent, though. So
Of course.
I looked at the bullet points on the article I brought up with the yearly rents. And this bullet point's quite interesting. 1933 saw the all-time largest year-over-year rent decrease at 13.5%.
Wow. When that was because of the recession.
That was because of unemployment.
Unemployment.
Because at
But
that time,
Newsom-
unemployment was like 25%.
Gavin Newsom said unemployment in California is all-time low right now.
Wait,
It is.
What year was that, Chris?
1933. Great Depression.
Got it.
But we're at all-time low unemployment now, so it should be relatively safe to be a landlord in California.
Well, not
And I
considering
wouldn't
all.
only look at the extremes, but we should look at them because it has happened.
Well,
But
it gives you an indicator
one
of
would
when it
say
can
that-
happen. When it can happen, right? Unemployment, substantial unemployment can lead to rents decreasing.
Man,
Correct.
if
And
you've-
rents can also go up to 10, 20, 22% in a year,
Absolutely.
but yes, we should look at that, but we wouldn't run our numbers, based on 2021 and 22, but we should be, hey, it's upside to have it. We should also be prepared that, okay, hey, you know what? If rents do go down 10%, if that's the worst case scenario, Great Depression, people in food lines on the street, and it only went down 13%.
well, if
Now,
it was that bad, they just wouldn't
Gotcha,
pay your rent.
Nancy.
But they just wouldn't pay your rent in California, though. So
Come
it'd go down
on, I know,
100.
but
It'd
So-
go down 100%.
there's other problems with being a landlord in blue states, right?
True.
Yeah.
Okay, because during COVID, right, it was like a year in which people didn't have to pay rent in
You didn't have to
California.
pay rent. So that
So-
stat of only 13% is kind of false, because it could be 100% loss of your rental income.
Yeah,
for a year.
in a blue state,
But it
right?
could
So
be.
so
You could have a tenant that paid rent. I mean,
Yes.
I
Sure.
actually, that was me. I had a tenant that was furloughed in 2020 in California. He paid his rent 100%.
but if he didn't, you couldn't kick him out. My only point to that is,
But not every situation is like that. Is all.
Right.
Sure.
That's the extremes.
and I'm just making a point to Dan stating that buying a house in California, and he was kind of alluding to, renting it is great. And I don't necessarily think that's always the case. You know, there's circumstances in which you can really get screwed, because how many people
Yeah.
can pay their rent, their mortgage, and not when they're not receiving rent, right?
Very
No,
few.
when they're not receiving income. Yeah.
Yeah.
So right. There's not how many people. Yeah. If you lose your job, tenant, likely you probably can't pay your rent. And then if you can't pay your rent, then your landlord can't pay their mortgage. That's correct. Now
Yep.
that would be the absolutely you know, like, and I'm saying that that couldn't happen. That, you know, that
It
I
did
think there are
happen.
times
It did
Right.
happen in
Well,
2020,
hopefully-
2021.
Hopefully you have equity to where you can sell it and not hemorrhage too fast,
Yeah.
too long.
Exactly. Equity, or do what you can to try to get them out or rework with them.
The only way you
but
get
again,
screwed
this
on that is if you don't have equity, so you just bought it,
right,
and that happens,
right.
so you can't sell it. So now what do you do? That's the real people that get screwed, and that's why timing it is important in a blue state. I guess, but this is complicated stuff, man. I gotta go, guys.
I think this
If
might
people have been
reserve,
watching this, if people have been
right?
watching this for an hour and a half, you can see
We can
this is a
start.
complex. We've just started scratching the surface of the complexity of this. This is why we have Joey on, who's our resident
Oh, I'm
realtor.
sorry, and I get fired up about rent, so as you can tell, but
We all do.
but yeah, this is a reason. Emergencies do happen. They do. And you know, it's not going to be super uncommon to where you have to work with a tenant. You know, my units in Dallas, I've had to work with tenants. It hasn't been a straight line up. I've had to work with them. It hasn't been perfect. And so this is why you want to have equity in the home, put a good down payment down, especially if it's a rental, and then have reserves like the three of us have on our single family in Plano, because it might take 1 or 2 months because another COVID happens, or 3 months. And so, you know, we want to keep the property.
Yeah.
And
the extra 1 or 2 months to find the right tenant, not the first one that comes knocking.
exactly.
You know, you want to wait a little longer to find the right one.
So Dan's in a hurry to get off. So I just want to leave my.
I mean, it's almost been 2 hours, guys. Jeez, I
I
lost
wanna-
track of time. I
I
saw
wanna s-
Joey and Chris start getting heated. I was
I
like,
know,
yes,
sorry. I was just
Hazen and Dr. Al round 2, let's go. But I honestly was asking those questions because I don't know, and I'm trying
and
to
you know
think
how
of
to
the
piss
people.
us off.
Well, no, but the people watching are these people.
Yeah.
Like, I see the comments. That I know that, like, the demos, a lot of them are these
Sure.
people.
Well, I want to say my goodbye with conspiracy theory. So Joey and I talked about this briefly when we had to pay for rent, or not rent. We had to pay for insurance on our property. Joey and I spoke about this briefly.
About to get me fired up.
Our insurance costs doubled, right? Because nobody wants
I
to
saw that text. Yeah.
nobody wants to cover rentals right now. And
By the way,
So
I'm
here's
so
the
glad you guys take care of that shit. Thank you.
Here's the conspiracy theory. So BlackRock is buying residential properties all over the country. It's just buying them up nonstop.
I saw Joey's
right?
video on Instagram. Of course, I know.
So how could this come to not format? How could this propagate such a situation in which they drive out the small investor?
You're trying to
right?
get us canceled between
Right.
your Redskins hat,
So
you will own nothing and be happy lane that this is going down, and the COVID background. We're done.
So as a small time investor, right, in real estate to rent it, right? How do you drive people out? Well, you don't offer them insurance, right? Because banks require you to have insurance. Right? You don't provide insurance to them. Does BlackRock need insurance? No, they don't even buy insurance because they have the value.
They own the insurance
companies. They can cover it themselves, right? Any losses. So they don't have to have insurance, right? Which, you know, as a homeowner, you don't have to have insurance either, so long as you can prove that you can cover any losses, right? You don't have to have insurance. Same thing for
something there.
I'm just saying that's because yeah, you have to cover it though, right? I think if you show that you have the property value plus 1%, that you don't have to carry insurance. I know that's true in some states.
Maybe, but at least in my experience, if you go without insurance for 1 month, your lender will force it on you. But maybe there's a rule. I haven't seen it. If you can show you have the net assets to cover, maybe that is. I just haven't experienced
for one of my rentals here in Arizona. I refinanced, right? So my old bank was Wells Fargo. So my mortgage and insurance was through Wells Fargo for like 10 years, more than 10 years. I forgot I even had insurance because it was through them. When I refinanced it, I used Rocket Mortgage, and I told them I'll find my own insurance. So I found Lemonade. I used them, but with Lemonade, they didn't auto renew me every year. So I forgot. So my bank called me, or they sent me a letter, and they said, "Hey, if you don't show us your insurance policy, we're good. We already selected this plan for you, and this will be your new mortgage payment."
And you're gonna pay it. Yeah.
And it was way more than what I found. So I was like, no, I have one. I just didn't send it. Chill. So I send it
Yeah.
to them, and they say, okay, it's been satisfied, but they
But
won't
maybe
let you
there's a
go
way
that long.
that you could prove that you have that. I didn't. Yeah, maybe I should check that out. But no, you know, and insurance isn't cheap. I mean, even for my primary here in California, just recently, I mean, dude, my insurance quotes were so outrageous, and then on all of our rentals, they're just so
Look into
outrageous.
Lemonade. Look into Lemonade. It worked for me.
Okay, I'll take a look at that. But Chris, I think you're right. My advice is stop having Blackstones and the big guys, the man win. Get in and just effing deal with it and get in the damn game and not have these big trillion-dollar corporations steal all the wealth that you could be creating for yourself. You know?
They say you will own nothing and be happy.
Yeah.
Well, this topic's
I think we have another hour enough, guys.
Yeah, we gotta have Joey come back. He's our resident realtor.
Guys,
And,
I'm sorry. I was a little too harsh.
Oh, not at all. I think that's what we need on these podcasts. It's like people expressing their opinions over what they believe. And at the end of the day, you guys were saying the same thing. Because I was like, wait a minute. No,
Yeah, no, we're just
you guys
saying
are
it a
saying the
little,
same thing.
yeah, a little differently. I just,
Well, you were speaking more in the
that
macro sense, Chris, in the micro.
Yeah.
But it's at the end of the day, we all agree you're better off
Kumbaya.
in control than at someone else's control of what you're gonna do.
Sheep.
I
agree.
But everybody go follow Joey. His Instagram is here and his YouTube as well.
Instagram.
Go help him
You'll
out.
add my YouTube channel. Yes, you will.
That's right. Go to his YouTube as well and his Instagram and just follow him there. Ask him all your questions there. Send him hate mail if you want, whatever. Like maybe you didn't get your answer. Yeah, tell him he's wrong. Tell him to steel man your argument. He'll do it.
Absolutely.
That's it.
So hang on, just to correct something I said. So it's not homeowner,